Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Olivia Bennet woke up every day next to Nathan with a sense of calm that she had believed for a long time was mature love. They shared the same coffee, discussed details of their routines, and said goodbye with a kiss before heading off to their commitments. He was an IT manager at a mid-sized company, while she was an architect with promising projects in the city. Everything seemed in order, as if they had found a comfortable rhythm of partnership and understanding. But, like many couples, the signs that something was off started subtly. It all began with seemingly harmless questions from Nathan about Christopher, Olivia's best friend since high school. At first, it was just an occasional comment, something like, "You still talk to him every day?" or "He always calls you at this time." She laughed, explained that it was just friendship, that it had always been that way, and that Christopher was part of her life in a way that never threatened anything. Nathan pretended to understand, but his gaze started carrying a different kind of shadow. He began paying too much attention to the messages, the smiles, the times Christopher's name naturally came up in conversation. The silent dinners, once rare, became frequent. Olivia felt that any mention of the friend could become a source of discomfort. And it did. One ordinary night, Nathan put down his fork halfway through dinner and said, bluntly, that things were going too far. That it didn't make sense for a married woman to talk so much with another man. That it wasn't jealousy, it was a matter of respect. Olivia felt the words like an accusation. She said she had always been honest with him. That hiding would be easier, but she had never hidden anything. Still, Nathan was firm, he wanted her to block Christopher. He said that, for him, it would be a gesture of choice. A sign of priority. She stood there, processing. Part of her understood the discomfort, but another part felt that giving in would mean giving up who she was before being a wife. And this conflict began to create cracks in the foundation of the marriage. Conversations became calculated. She thought twice before mentioning anything, and he responded with silence that screamed louder than words. They didn't argue all the time, but the emotional distance was clear. Olivia started sleeping turned away from him. Nathan, even lying beside her, seemed miles away. One night, after one of those cold dinners, Nathan looked into her eyes and asked if she had already made a decision. Olivia answered with another question, "Are you asking me to choose between you and your childhood friend?" He stayed quiet for a few seconds, then said he wasn't imposing anything, but that he needed to understand whether their relationship was really a priority for her. Olivia, with a lump in her throat, looked away. Not out of love loss, but out of fear of getting into a fight that seemed to have no solution. 2 days later, Nathan came home from work early, packed some clothes into a suitcase, and announced that he would spend some time at his sister's house. He said he needed space, that everything was suffocating, and that he no longer knew if continuing like that was possible. Olivia, shocked, tried to argue. But the decision had already been made. Nathan left through the door, and with him went the part of the routine that gave her security. On the first night alone, Olivia walked around the house in silence. She passed by the couch where they used to watch TV, looked at the chair where he left his coat, saw his favorite mug still in the sink. Every small detail seemed to scream his absence. She picked up her phone, opened the chat with Christopher, but just stared at the screen for a while. She took a deep breath and typed, "Can you come over? I just need to talk." She wanted company. Someone who wouldn't judge her. Someone who knew her before all of this. The message was sent. Christopher replied within minutes, saying he'd stop by later. Olivia lay on the couch and closed her eyes. For the first time, she felt like her life was no longer under control. And worse than that, she felt like maybe she had contributed to it happening. The confusion inside her grew. She still loved Nathan, but something inside her also screamed for understanding, for acceptance, for a place where she could be heard without having to justify herself. Christopher arrived shortly after 9. Olivia had been waiting since she sent the message, with an anxiety she couldn't explain. When she heard the doorbell, she felt a strange pressure in her chest, like something was about to change, but she still didn't know what exactly. She opened the door with a fragile smile, the kind of smile forced just to keep from crying. He didn't ask anything right away, only hugged her tightly, as if that simple gesture could mend the pieces that had fallen apart inside her since Nathan left. They sat on the couch. The TV was on just to fill the silence. Neither of them actually watched what was playing. Olivia tried to start a conversation about anything trivial, but each word felt heavy. Christopher listened carefully, without interrupting, as he always did. He was good at that. He knew when to speak and when simply being present was enough. And that night, presence was all she needed. She told him that Nathan had left the house, that everything had started with his demands about their friendship, that she hadn't known how to handle it, and now she was here, alone, trying to figure out how quickly everything had gotten out of control. Christopher ran his hand through his hair, thoughtful. He said he had always feared being an obstacle in her life, but he never knew what to do to avoid it. She shook her head, saying he wasn't the problem, that the blame was hers, for avoiding difficult conversations, for trying to keep everything balanced without realizing there was no balance anymore. And as she spoke, her eyes filled with tears. Not from the words, but from what she still couldn't say, the feeling of loss, the regret of not listening to Nathan better, and the discomfort of finding comfort in someone he considered a threat. Christopher held her hand. Olivia didn't pull back. Their fingers fit together naturally, the kind of gesture that would have gone unnoticed between friends before, but that now carried a different meaning. They looked at each other for a few seconds. No one said anything. It wasn't a romantic look, but it was also no longer just friendship. It was the reflection of two hurt people, trying to find some meaning in the chaos. He leaned closer slowly. Olivia hesitated for a moment. She thought of Nathan. She thought of everything he had said about the two of them. She thought of the request to cut contact, the days of arguments, the suitcase being closed in haste. She also thought of how many times she had avoided discomfort and preferred to stay silent to maintain the illusion of normalcy. They kissed gently, almost with guilt. Nothing about that gesture was planned. It was impulse. Need. Escape. The kiss turned into something more. And in that room, which still bore marks of the marriage, Olivia and Christopher stopped being just friends. When Olivia woke up, she turned and saw him sleeping. His head resting on the pillow, his features peaceful, as if he perhaps believed that moment would bring them closer to a new beginning. But inside her, something was already crumbling. She sat on the edge of the bed, her heart tight. She ran her hands over her face and tried to remember exactly when she lost control over herself. She dressed quietly, trying not to wake him. She went to the living room, sat on the couch, and stared at nothing. Her mind spun in circles. What had happened was real. Irreversible. And worse, it was something she couldn't justify with feelings. It wasn't about love. It was about confusion, about the need to feel that someone was still around. She remembered Nathan's words about loyalty. The accusations that, at the time, sounded unfair. Now? How could she explain to herself that, even after everything he had asked, she had done exactly what he most feared? Christopher woke up shortly after and came to her. He sat beside her, still with messy hair and an expression of someone unsure of how to act. He asked if she was okay. Olivia responded with a vague gesture and a lost look. He understood it wasn't time to talk much. He only said he was there, that she could count on him, but Olivia didn't know how to react. Part of her wanted to cling to that support. Another part felt an unbearable weight for crossing a line she should have respected. Not for Nathan. For herself. When Christopher left, he left behind an even bigger silence. The door closed, and Olivia had the feeling that something inside her had also closed. She took a shower, got back into bed where everything had happened, and stared at the ceiling. She thought about calling Nathan, but what would she say? That he was right? That she had done exactly what she promised she never would? That now, besides losing him, she had also corrupted a friendship that had lasted years? She felt exhausted. Like every choice from that night had demanded a price too high. She tried to sleep, but her mind replayed every gesture, every word, every second. That night, Olivia didn't cry. The crying would come later. What she felt was a sort of numbness, like she was still in a nightmare and expected to wake up. But reality was harsh. She had betrayed the trust of someone she loved and had betrayed herself as well. And that was a pain hard to erase. In the following days, Olivia barely managed to concentrate. Her body went to work, participated in meetings, delivered reports, and reviewed projects, but her head was somewhere else. Guilt silently gnawed at her. There was no one to tell about what had happened with Christopher. She felt split in two. One part trying to move forward as if it were just an isolated mistake, and the other trapped in the certainty that this mistake had deeper consequences than she imagined. At home, the objects remained in the same places, but the space around her felt colder. The silence was thicker. Time passed in a strange way, like each hour pushed Olivia closer to a point where there would be no turning back. She started avoiding contact with Christopher. She answered some messages distantly. Made up excuses, removed his name from her phone's main screen. She was afraid of what she might feel if she saw him again. But above all, she felt ashamed. The kind of shame that can't be erased with apologies or the idea that it was just a moment of weakness. She began organizing the house. Took old clothes out of the closet, separated books for donation, moved boxes from the guest bedroom. She needed an occupation to distract her, but unknowingly, she ended up rummaging through the memories that hurt the most. It was during this cleaning that she found a black notebook, tucked in the back of a drawer on Nathan's nightstand. It was thick, with worn edges, clearly used for a long time. She assumed it was just an old notebook for notes. She opened it out of curiosity, expecting to see task lists or work-related scribbles. But right from the first pages, she realized it was a diary. An intimate record. The paragraphs were dated. They contained confessions, reflections, and fragments of the soul of someone who rarely opened up aloud. With her heart racing, Olivia flipped through some pages. Her name appeared in a few of them. And before even deciding whether she should continue reading, she was already caught up in his words. She discovered that Nathan had been cheated on before. Long before he met her. A former girlfriend, whom he had planned to marry, had betrayed him with someone close. It wasn't just infidelity, it was the breaking of everything he believed about trust. In the diary, Nathan wrote about how it took him years to believe in anyone again. How he had to relearn how to lower his guard, how every act of care required an internal effort from him. Reading the following pages was like getting hit repeatedly. Olivia remembered the times Nathan questioned her about Christopher, the requests for boundaries, the conversations where he talked about respect and she dismissed them as exaggeration. That wasn't just jealousy. It was fear. Fear of reliving something that had destroyed his self-esteem long ago. Olivia found herself facing a truth she had never considered: she had been careless with his wounds. Not intentionally, but with emotional neglect. By invalidating his feelings, by not recognizing the sensitivity behind his requests, she had exposed him once again to a pain he knew all too well. She closed the journal with trembling hands. Laid down on the floor and cried. Cried without knowing how long. She didn't just cry over the betrayal, but for ignoring the story of the man who shared his life with her. For not seeing the signs. For putting her own desires above his pain. And more than that, for realizing that this was a constant pattern in the way she lived. Nathan called in the middle of the afternoon, after several days without direct contact. His voice was dry, direct, like he had thought about this for a long time before dialing that number. Olivia answered with a tight chest, trying to guess whether he had changed his mind or if this would just be a conversation to finally end whatever was left between them. He was clear, he wanted to meet in person, but without creating conflicts. He said he didn't have the energy for arguments anymore, that he just wanted peace, a simple life, without drama, without emotional drain. She agreed to the meeting, even though she knew that any wrong word could bury any chance of reconciliation completely. They sat across from each other. Nathan seemed calm, but his eyes were hard, like they were protecting a lingering pain. He spoke first, saying he had thought a lot and that he preferred to end that relationship. He said he couldn't live in a house where doubt had become routine. That the emotional toll cost too much, and that he just wanted to live in peace, without having to prove his sanity to the one who shared his bed. Olivia listened in silence, holding back the urge to interrupt. When he finished, she took a deep breath and then spoke. She said she had found his journal, that she had read every page, that she had cried over the words, that she felt ashamed for not having given him the care he deserved. She admitted that, until that moment, she hadn't known the depth of the wounds he carried. Nathan frowned. He asked, in a higher tone, how she had the courage to invade such a personal space. He said that it wasn't hers, that he never wanted anyone to read it. He got angry at the intrusion. But before he left, she grabbed his arm and continued. She said she understood his anger. That she didn't expect forgiveness for that. That she just wanted him to know that she finally saw what he had tried to say so many times. She asked for a second chance. She said that, if life ever put her in that choice again between keeping the friendship and preserving the marriage, she would choose him. And that now was what she was doing, choosing him, even knowing it might already be too late. Nathan stayed silent for a few seconds. The kind of silence that stretched time. He looked into her eyes and asked if she was sure. Olivia said yes. That she was ready to make it work, to rebuild everything from scratch. He took a deep breath. And when he finally answered, he said, "Okay, let's try. I still love you. And if you choose me now, I'm willing to stay." Before she could smile, Olivia lowered her head. She felt the weight of what still needed to be said. She knew that, if she kept it quiet, she would be building a new beginning on the same flaw that destroyed them. She raised her eyes, her voice faltered at first, but she forced each word with determination. "There's something you need to know. On the night you left, I slept with Christopher." Nathan froze. His gaze went completely blank. He slowly got up from the chair, as if still trying to understand if he had heard correctly. He repeated the sentence, as if seeking confirmation. "You slept with him?" She answered only with a nod and a whisper of affirmation. Nathan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened them again, he looked like a different person. He said only, "My lawyer will get in touch with you. I'll go ahead with the divorce." And he left. Without yelling. Without drama. Just the certainty that, at that moment, everything had come to an end. The following weeks were quiet and painful. The divorce process moved quickly, without resistance from either side. Nathan didn't want discussion, didn't want renegotiation, only signed the papers and sent his lawyer to handle the rest. When the envelope with the confirmation arrived, Olivia held that paper in her hands for a few minutes, as if still hoping to wake up from a nightmare. But it was real. The marriage had ended. Without scandal, without a chance for reconstruction. Only an end. Olivia threw herself into work, trying to occupy her mind, but inside, the pain throbbed. At night, the silence of the apartment seemed to scream. Every corner reminded her of Nathan. The way he folded his coat, how he left the mug by the sink, how he breathed deeply when tired. Everything now was absence. And she felt like she hadn't just lost a husband, she had lost a man who had loved her sincerely, even when carrying his own wounds. It was in this scenario that Christopher returned. He called. Said he needed to see her. Olivia agreed, perhaps out of curiosity, perhaps because she still felt a huge hole that no one else seemed able to fill. When he arrived, he had hope and fear in his eyes. He said he had done therapy in the past weeks. That he had learned a lot about himself. And that after that night, he was certain of what he felt. He looked into her eyes and confessed, "I've always loved you. Since high school. I just never had the courage to say it. I always settled for being around, even watching you with others. But that night, I was certain. You're the woman of my life." Olivia listened in silence. She felt something tighten inside. But it wasn't love. It was exhaustion. Frustration. All the things that had been stuck for years, waiting for an action that never came. When he finished, she answered firmly, without raising her voice, but with the confidence of someone who finally understood her own worth. "You had your whole life to tell me that, Christopher. Years. And you waited until I was broken, until I had no ground left, to declare yourself? Sorry, but I don't want a man who only moves when he has already lost everything. I want someone who fights for me when there's still something to save. Someone with action. And you were never that someone." He lowered his head, like he had expected to hear exactly that. He didn't argue. He just thanked her for listening and left. Nathan moved on with his life. Quietly. He didn't post anything, didn't send messages, didn't look back. He found the peace he had always sought. Olivia, on the other hand, still cried sometimes. Still thought about everything that could have been. But she also understood that pain is part of growth. She was rebuilding little by little. One day at a time. Christopher sought help. Continued therapy, determined to understand himself before getting involved with anyone else. And that's how the story ended. Without a classic happy ending. But with truths spoken, wounds opened, and separate paths. Because sometimes, the hardest lesson in life is realizing that losing something can be the beginning of truly finding yourself. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.